You made it. Just enjoy that there's a little bit of peace and quiet. You're sitting, there's nobody next to you. You're not fighting for an armrest, even though there aren't any. This is a good place to be. I'm Chris. It's nice to have you here today. And with me, we've got Scott and Randall. We'll introduce them in just a moment. If you're here for a Rivian presentation, we can make some stuff up about Rivian because there was a conflict in sessions and so on. So we'll figure out some way to make you happy. Today we're going to talk about your cloud journey, however, your hybrid cloud journey, and how I hope you're all here because you're on that journey and it's messy. And we've invited these guests here today to talk about their journeys so that hopefully you can learn a little bit about your own. So I'm Chris. I've got Scott Schultz with me and Randall Thompson. We're going to start with Scott, and then Randall, we'll talk to you in a couple of minutes. To begin, I want to introduce you to a simple framework that has been especially effective at describing this thing that we call a cloud journey. There's a lot of hyperbole. There's a lot of, frankly, sometimes nonsense and hype when we talk about these things. And we've spent a lot of time trying to demystify it and break it down to something that's really pragmatic. And it's helped our own vocabulary, and we hope that it helps you as well. Because cloud journey, I think, involves a little bit of hand-waving sometimes, and we want to bring it down from that. I'm going to be referring to the stage numbers that you see in this chart throughout the rest of our talk today. Stage 1 is on-prem. By show of hands, how many of you still have workloads that are running on-prem? All the hands go up. Stage 2 is where you lift and shift. And that sounds like a pretty fun thing to go and do. And so you have lots of EC2 instances of virtual machines, and you're in the cloud. Congratulations. How many of you are in stage 2? All the hands go up. Stage number 3 is where we realize that things were fun in the second stage, but they got really expensive really fast. And it requires us to rethink what we're doing because cloud at all costs turns out to not be a thing. And so the third stage is centered on innovation and refactoring. We're going to talk to our guests a little bit more about that today. By a show of hands, how many of you are in the third stage? Some of the hands go up. Okay, not a surprise. And then we get to the fourth stage, transformation, cloud native. This is where the cool kids live, right? Except what we're going to talk about today is that while that's true, it's not always true, and it's perhaps becoming less true than it was recently in the past. Stage 4 is not a destination. Stage 1 is not for losers, and stage 4 is not for cool kids. And what I appreciate that has changed in the marketing rhetoric that we hear out there around us today from last year is that I think we're all starting to align on that truth. It's not about cloud at all costs, and we're going to give you some stories about that. What I see is that, and probably, here we'll do the hand raising thing again, that you're probably in most or all 4 of these stages at the same time. And it's not a transitory period while you're moving from less cool stuff to more cool stuff, which is what we would have talked about a few years ago on a stage like this. Now it's, no, I'm in all 4 stages, probably going to stay there. It works really well for the needs that I have, but there are some very big differences. Because the ways that you monitor and manage over on the left side in 1 and 2 are very different than monitoring and managing over on the right side because the tech stacks are so different. And so it leaves many of you with this bifurcated world. I think of it like an iceberg, and it's cracking down the middle, and you're standing in between, and you're still slowly starting to do the splits because the ways that you worked before and the ways that you're working in the new world in AWS are different. And that's what we're going to talk about more today. So we're going to go through this chart multiple times, and I want you to think about where you are, where the focus of your spend and your time and your energy is. I've spoken to some of y'all here at the conference already this week about how we pulled back from this idea that we've got to go to 3 and 4. That's a thing we've got to go and do right now. And we're saying we're going to go do it when it's right. You're starting to hear terms like cloud right or cloud smart or cloud optimized. I'm not sure that there's a single term that's been centered on here yet. But the principle is all 4 are for cool kids. They are tools in your belt to use when and where you need them. And if you're sitting here today, I presume you're here to learn more about how to manage and monitor these things efficiently and effectively, despite their differences. Oops, wrong button. Let's go forward. So, Scott, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to come be with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, so Scott Schultz, I'm the VP of Tech Ops and Infrastructure for Topgolf. We own and operate 87 domestic U.S. venues, 3 in the U.K., and 6 international franchise venues. Obviously, as the name implies, we're centered around golf.
So I think of you as an entertainment company that is actually a technology company that happens to hit golf balls.
Exactly.
Do you feel like that's a fair characterization?
Yeah, I mean, we're a tech company first. We just happen to be in the sports entertainment space, really around golf. But really, at the end of the day, we're really all about the unlimited power of play. And we believe in that so much that we've actually made that part of our mission statement. We have a lot of sayings at Topgolf. One is more play, play more. I mean, we're all about play, about having a good time. Our kind of key driver as a business, and our mission really is to get 50 billion golf ball hits, whether that's in a Topgolf venue, in a Top Tracer equipped range, or on one of our digital apps, digital games by the end of 2025. And right now we're sitting at about 13 billion and change.
So I'm just kind of curious, we're doing the hand raising thing today.
How many people have actually been to Topgolf? Okay, keep your hands up.
There
How
we
many
go.
people
Okay. Most of you
have been to a Topgolf that does not include Las Vegas?
Oh, put your hands down.
Oh, actually, I'm impressed.
Good.
It's
okay.
usually 50-50.
Yeah.
So.
Good. So you're coming up 90 venues.
Yep, 90 venues at the end of this year.
There's a few of them that are near me. I love your story because it's got such a rich blend of technology in it. So you've got this connected experience. And what do you call your customers?
Players.
Players, okay.
Yep.
So players come. Tell me what that experience is like, because you've got a whole big blend of technology that makes this experience work.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what we really focus on the concept of the player experience. What we want is somebody that will come into a venue. They don't have to be a golfer. In fact, 51% of the people that come to a Topgolf in a year have never played a round of green grass golf in their lives.
Okay, that's me.
That was me when I joined the company. Additionally, we tend to skew very young. So we have an 18 to 34-year-old age demographic, for our players that come into the venue. They're all about the experience. They don't want to go spend 4 hours on a golf course driving around. They want to come in, have a social experience with their friends, do a little trash talking, maybe play a fun game. I do that exceptionally well. I also receive it exceptionally well from my coworkers. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is deliver, a game experience and a social experience that isn't so visibly technology driven. Technology is at the heart of it, but we want to obfuscate that complexity. We don't want the player to be thinking about the tech. And there is a lot of it. We're a very data-rich environment. In fact, we're proud to say that we have more golf shot data than all other golf outlets combined. We average about 7 to 8 billion golf shots per year as a company, and so we collect all of that data. It is anonymized, so there's no PII issues there or anything like that. So it is safe from a consumer perspective. But we try to help the player understand not only how to play the game, because it's a tough game. I mean, if you've never played golf, taking a long stick with a little ball on the end of it and hitting a tiny ball is not easy. I can attest. I've been with the company 8 years, and I still am a horrible golfer. But we try to create that social environment all the way from the mobile app, which is really kind of the entry point, from an awareness perspective when you visit a Topgolf, all the way through the check-in process when you walk in the door, the getting into the bay and getting started, playing the game, and then even after the visit from a post-visit survey perspective. There is a lot of interconnected technology that makes that work. And when it works well, it's great.
What kinds of technologies? I see bay and ball and dispenser. What kinds of tech do you use for that?
Yeah, so obviously, traditional infrastructure, network, servers, end-user compute, things like that. We've got a
cloud or on-prem?
On a mix. So we have both cloud and on-prem. I would say in a venue, it's probably a 60% on-prem deployment from a core infrastructure perspective. We also have a lot of IoT devices, whether it's the RFID chips in the balls, RFID readers in the dispensers or the targets. I always tell people if you want the concept of Topgolf, it's darts. The dartboard's just laid on the ground. That's think of it in those terms, and that's how you can get the scoring. Not to mention the cameras that do the ball flight tracking, which is a newer technology we've been deploying the last probably 6 years now. Plus a lot of other sensors, things like beacons in the TVs, bay pendants. There's a lot of devices that sit in a venue that deliver that experience.
What about the mobile experience?
Yeah, so from a mobile perspective, we've actually come a long way in the last 2 years. Traditionally, prior to 2 years ago, our mobile experience was like a lot of companies. It was just an app. You could log in, see your account. You could look at the visit that you did, look at your scores. We really branched out in the last 2 years to making it a more usable app for the player in the sense that you can book your bay reservation in advance. You can do join the wait, so that you get a two-way message, interaction between the system and your mobile app. So you say, I want to join the wait, and they go, it's a 30-minute, and then we'll text you at different intervals based on real-time data processing going on in the venue, and as well as the data that's also fed up to Amazon.
I think you've got one of the richest augmented reality experiences I can think of. Before we were even using that word, really.
Yeah, we've been trying. So if you think about Topgolf, when I joined the company, it was just RFID only. So if you couldn't hit a ball into a hole in the ground, you got no points. Let's take a really frustrating sport and create a really frustrating game experience and combine them together, and you end up with really frustrated people. We acquired a company in 2016 out of Sweden that developed a technology for ball flight tracking for the PGA Tour. And so if you've seen a PGA Tour event with the tee shot, the arced line, there's only 2 companies in the world that do that technology. One is ours and the other is TrackMan. We don't talk about them a lot. And so, that particular technology opened up a whole new world for us because it allowed us to gamify the entire outfield. And it was our first kind of foray into digital experiences. So you can go into a venue now, with your kids who don't want to play Topgolf. They don't want to play a virtual golf course. They want to play Angry Birds, or they want to play Jewel Jam. Tip. If you ever want to play against really good golfers, play Jewel Jam, you will smoke them every time because they're trying to hit a very precise spot. You just have to crush the ball anywhere in the outfield to get points. It's like Candy Crush in a sense. So I'll give you these little tips as we go along because these are the games I like to play.
Love it.
Yeah, pro tips. But yeah, it allowed us to create that first kind of pseudo-augmented reality experience. We've now kind of branched out on the mobile app and actually being able to let you hold your phone up and see the virtual trace on your phone, and also send that to social media so you can brag about my perfect shot that went all the way to the white target or to the brown target.
That's great. Thanks. So coming back to the cloud journey.
Yep.
We talked about all the stages. We all put our hands up. It sounds like you've just described that you are in all the stages. Could you talk a little bit more about where you see yourself in this graphic and some of the technologies that you use to support it?
Yeah, so I would say we're probably more often than not in stage 1, 2, and 3. We do a little bit in stage 4, but we're not quite there yet. Our cloud journey really started in 2015 when our CTO, who joined about 9 months before I did, said, we're going to be cloud first, cloud all the time. My vision is we will eventually completely serverless in the venues. Everything will be run out of the cloud. And then we very quickly realized that that was really expensive and costly and not quite ready for where we were.
Sounds like a familiar story.
Yeah. And so, I think our first sticker shock was cost. In 2016, 2017, we started seeing the cost of the Amazon bills that we were getting, as well as Azure, because we actually use both, but we're 90% Amazon, especially for operational systems. And so we started to kind of take a step back, and I would say we were kind of on the early side of the hybrid approach, just from a reality perspective. And as time has gone on, we've moved more from critical workloads that make sense to move to the cloud. We've moved out of the venues to the cloud. So things like your player lookup for your account. It doesn't make sense to replicate databases across 87 venues when we can replicate that data to the cloud and do an API call and pull the data down. It's the same for player data, so your shot data. instead of trying to replicate, 8 billion shots across 87 venues, we just store it in the cloud, and then we pull it down into the mobile app and into the game system as it's needed. So.
There's a lot of analytics, I think, over on the right side of that chart.
Yeah, there's a ton of analytics. From a product perspective, obviously, like a lot of companies, we started out with very heavy EC2, S3, virtual private clouds, especially for our domestic and franchise venues. WAFs for protection and load balancing. We've moved into Elasticsearch, Redshift, and most recently QuickSight from an analytics and reporting perspective.
Does that mean that there's this gravity that's pulling everything over to the right side? If we meet again next year, are you going to say everything's in stage 4?
I don't think I'm going to be alive when that happens. No. I mean, that is obviously, that's the holy grail for us. We have 87 venues. We have no venue has a single technology resource in it. So there's not we call employees playmakers, by the way, just so when I say playmaker, you know what I'm talking about. None of our venues have playmakers that have any tech training or a tech designation to their role. So obviously, we manage everything centrally out of our Dallas-based corporate office. The holy grail would be everything in the cloud, because we could easily manage it. But the reality is, there are some workloads in our venues that just don't make sense.
I have to imagine latency maybe isn't there?
Yeah, latency is our biggest challenge. We do have pretty robust connectivity to our venues, and we do have redundant circuits in every venue, at least 2, and in some cases 3. We do have pretty high throughput, but the reality is, if I'm standing there and I hit a ball and I've got to wait 30 seconds for data to traverse out of the venue to the cloud, do its processing, and come back, and before I see the ball flight track, well, I've already moved on, and now Chris is ready. He's like, come on, get out of the way, Scott.
Spinning beach ball?
The spinning wheel of death. We don't want the spinning wheel of death in our games. That would be a bad thing. So latency is our biggest concern there.
So talk to me for a moment, if you would, about what happens when the process that you've described maybe isn't working correctly. What if it were to fail? What would that impact look like?
Best case, it has an experience impact. So you're still able to play a game, you're still able to order food and drinks, you're still able to have a good time, but maybe your ball flight doesn't track, so you don't get the digital rendering, or the ball doesn't read and you don't get points for it. You hit it in the target, but you didn't get points, so you're frustrated. So how that manifests for us is potential loss of repeat visits, because a lot like any entertainment, retail, or hospitality company, we live and die based on how many times you come back in a year as an existing customer. Worst case, we actually lose hard revenue. We either can't take revenue because we can't charge, if it's, say, a point of sale issue or things like that, or we end up having to comp revenue, much like if you go to a restaurant and get a bad meal and complain, and they say, oh, we're going to take that off your check. Both of those are equally bad.
There's a hard cost.
There's a hard cost
to the experience not being optimal.
Yeah, definitely. How we handle it, because we manage all 87 venues from our Dallas office, we use a lot of automation. In fact, we use a lot of automation in Amazon to handle things like that, but also a lot of the automation on the on-prem platform. And we do a lot of remote support. It's in the past, it hasn't always been a fairly seamless thing or a very timely thing.
Can you talk about that maybe for a moment? If you're talking about automation and things now, what did the before times look like? Maybe if we were having this conversation a few years ago.
Yeah, so the before times, so just to go back, when I joined the company, our on-prem technology was just standard servers, very heavily virtualized environment, a lot of manually penned workloads. So if I lost a server node, I had a hard closure of the venue until I could restore that server node back to operation. There was not a lot of remote instrumentation of the stack in the venue. So I didn't know there was a problem in the venue until somebody in the Bay had a problem, or a playmaker trying to ring something up had a problem, called their manager on the radio and said, we're having this problem. The manager then picked the phone up and called the support center in Dallas and said, hey, we're having a problem. And then we engaged with them, triaged the issue, and then started on the troubleshooting and the resolution process.
What kind of time frame
Or
are you
be
talking
lucky
about?
someone called in the first
That's
place.
Yeah,
right. That's right.
Assuming they called in the first place, and they didn't always call about all issues.
Y'all ever not call because it's not worth your time?
Yeah. Yeah, so something that would take 5 minutes to fix, if it's instrumented or automated, could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Obviously, every 30 minutes, just a little inside info, every 30 minutes of lost revenue in an average Topgolf venue equates to about $60 in revenue. So, you're looking at about $120 an hour in lost revenue if an issue, the 5-minute issue, takes an hour to fix. So it was problematic, and it was costly, and it not only cost us the revenue, it cost us frustration from our playmakers, and frustration for our players as well.
I think you're tapping into something here, because ultimately we talk about, well, I got to monitor these systems and make sure that they work well. Yep. And as one who's come from that background, unintentionally, it doesn't feel like a terribly glamorous place, but the outcomes that you're describing are materially critical to your business.
Oh, absolutely.
So just for a moment, compare how those pull together, because I watch bouncy charts and they tell me what systems are doing, but you say, this is player experience, this is revenue for the company. How do you integrate those together?
Yeah, so obviously we're like any company. We've got critical systems we've identified as things that absolutely have to function to deliver the player experience. We do monitor them. We treat our bays much like a retail store would treat physical inventory. To us, those bays are sellable inventory. And so we want that inventory to be essentially on the floor whenever the customer wants, or consumer or player in this case wants to consume and buy that. So we monitor things like bay availability, our point of sale system availability, our core infrastructure availability, because all those things, any one of those things, I use the analogy a lot with people. It's like the Boeing 747, 6 million parts. They all have to work, or the plane doesn't get off the ground, doesn't stay in the air, and doesn't land. It's kind of similar. It's like all those things have to work in concert with each other for the experience to actually happen. Now, there are gradations of experience, so you can still make revenue, but obviously the lower gradation is not really great for the player.
Thanks. So you've chosen to partner with LogicMonitor on this journey.
Yep.
I wondered if you'd share a little bit about how you came to that decision, and amidst all the different choices that are out there, why this has worked so well for you and your business.
Yeah, so our journey to LogicMonitor really started probably a year and a half ago, actually. We were a big Nagios shop. We got a mountain of alerts, correlated alerts from Nagios.
Yep, sounds familiar.
It was incredibly difficult to implement and keep up with when you're growing at 10 to 11 new venues per year. And we realized that while we had some monitoring tools on the APM side, we really didn't have robust monitoring on the infrastructure side. And so we started looking at products on the market. We actually talked with one of our VARs that we do business with, and we're saying, hey, what are y'all seeing? And they actually helped bring LogicMonitor to the table. We did a proof of concept in one of our local DFW venues, where we basically loaded up every device we could think of in the venue. We collected way more data and instrumentation than we probably really needed.
I can imagine our SEs just being so happy that you wanted to do that.
Yes, they did. So, and so we ran a proof of concept for several months, the tool, and how we ended up choosing LogicMonitor largely was because it gave us a single pane of glass visibility into the infrastructure and the state in the venue, and it correlated it, with these different dependencies and devices, presented it not only to my infrastructure team, but more importantly to my support team. So our support engineers could actually, when they saw something alert or they got a call and they went and looked, they could see what was going on and potentially resolve it themselves, as opposed to escalating it up the chain to tier 3 and tier 4.
You're avoiding incidents altogether now.
Yeah, that's really, at the end of the day, the value we've gotten out of LogicMonitor to a large extent is we're actually seeing issues in our venues before our venues are even aware there's an issue. And a lot of times we're able to proactively resolve them before they even know. There might be a slight blip for the player, but it's really short-lived. And that in and of itself has really kind of justified the ROI behind the platform.
What kind of consolidation have you looked at as you've been putting all these pieces together?
Well, consolidation, so we're Or like a lot of companies, we were a privately held company until 2021, which meant that we implemented one solution after another. In many cases, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 of the same type of solution. I think at one point we did have 7 different monitoring capabilities within our operation, and we've used LogicMonitor to consolidate a lot of them. We hope to eventually consolidate all of them down to LogicMonitor and it to be our kind of single pane of glass, both on the infrastructure and the APM and the cloud side, so we get that one holistic view.
That's great, thanks. It's kind of a burning question here, and if I were sitting out there, I'd want to know, well, Amazon has a really strong monitoring product in CloudWatch, and so why not use CloudWatch for these things you're talking about?
Well, we do for, in partnership with LogicMonitor for all of the cloud-based systems, but the reality is I have a ton of devices in Venue that don't necessarily feed data out to AWS and wouldn't be consumed by CloudWatch. Right. So there's just, that's that, going back to stage 1, they're just devices that are never going to make sense for me to push that data to the cloud. I'm going to say never, maybe never.
Makes sense.
Hopefully someday.
I think the LogicMonitor premise is to make CloudWatch better.
Yes.
It's not a competition. It's not an either or. I don't hear you saying like I had to choose. It's more.
No, it's
a source of data.
It's a collaborative. You know,
Okay.
it's a nice combination of products and capabilities that let us have the visibility we need on the cloud side as well as the on-prem side.
All 4 stages together.
All 4 stages together, as you said. All the cool kids do all 4 stages, by the way.
So, all the cool kids, all 4 stages. Remember that one. You brought us a dashboard today. I appreciate you being willing to do that. I want to just have a quick look at that. And from far away on a big screen, it's a little like braille on the board. That's right. So can you explain a little bit about what we're looking at here and what it means to your business?
Yeah, so this is, we call it the executive dashboard. It's really an operations dashboard. We want to equip our operators and our above venue operations leadership team, as well as our exec teams, to see the critical elements of a venue's operation in real time in a language that speaks to them. That way, we don't have to, as technologists, we don't have to justify the ROI behind a tool and say, oh, we've eliminated this outage and that outage. This actually lets us put the data in front of them and lets them see the state. So all the critical things like point of sale, core network, bay availability, which is the 2 graph, kind of the squiggly line EEG charts you see here. It lets them just have a quick snapshot and say, oh, okay, everything looks good. Okay, let's go back and do our core business.
So this is a translation layer then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You're speaking business on here. I presume you've got other layers underneath that show you all the little pointy chart stuff.
Yeah, we've got tons and tons of dashboards under this. This is really about bridging the gap between technologists being business people first and technologists second. So we take technology tools that we would use in and out every day and then present them to the business in a way that makes sense to them so that we're essentially talking their language.
That is such an important thing that you're saying here. Because when we grow up in the world of monitoring, my wife sometimes tells me that I make up terms that don't exist. And she's right. But also, we speak a language, not unlike in the medical community. They speak a language, we speak a language, and we forget that the words that we use are not understood by everybody else. So I love what you're saying here. You're translating it into layman's talk that says, here's the value of how we're supporting a business outcomes through technology, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't require a PhD in tech.
In monitoring,
in monitoring.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks. Okay, that's a great view. I want to see if I can take a stab at summarizing some of the things that you've shared with us here. So the consolidation effort, I'm not sure how everybody can get to one single pane of glass. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure that's the right measuring stick, but consolidation is a thing.
It is.
And I think there's very real dollars to save in there. You mentioned your VAR a little bit earlier. I think you're working with SHI.
Correct.
And there's lots of partners to work with out there. I'm thinking about VAR means value added reseller.
Right.
Tell us about how your partnership with SHI has flourished, and where's the V in that VAR formula, if you will?
Yeah. So like a lot of companies, our initial relationship with SHI was very tactical. We need to buy this software. We call our VAR up and say we need 100 units of this, and they do a quote. It really became more strategic for us in the last couple of years when the team at SHI that we work with came in and said, hey, we would like to tour your venue. We would like you to explain to us how your venue operates, and really made the investment in becoming a strategic partner. The nice thing about that for us now is that lets us, when we get a business challenge from the operations team or the exec team, that we want to go do X, Y, Z and make virtual pigs fly in the air or whatever it is.
Common need.
Common need. We're able to go to our VAR and say, hey, this is the business problem we're trying to solve. We know there's technology out there. The reality is, in the old days, we would have gone off and done all the research ourselves and talked to the vendors and negotiated, terms.
RFP maybe?
Maybe done an RFP, and actually in our case, probably not done an RFP. We would have just, Googled and found somebody and then talked to them and implemented it, hence the reason we had 7 tools.
Right, okay.
We were able to go to them and bring the business problem to them and say, go off in the market and find things that you think can meet that need and come back to us. So we essentially used them as a pseudo, almost R&D effort, for our team.
It's like an expertise amplification or something like that.
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
Great, thanks. That's a helpful way to think about it, because I think sometimes VARs get a bad rap.
They do get a bad rap.
For they provide so much more value. So thanks.
Yes, they do.
So, your deep visibility, you talk about the visibility into the bay, IT, OT. You've got this big IoT thing you were talking about. And then the fact that it connects all the way into the cloud, I think, is pretty special, because you're dealing with this really broad cross-section of technology every day. It's got to be interesting because the days aren't all the same for you.
Never.
But it also got to be a headache sometimes because they're so disparate from one another.
They're absolutely, never, no 2 days are ever the same. And the challenges, whether it's an IoT device, a core infrastructure device, a cloud service, it just kind of ebbs and flows based on, and then it's multiplied by 87. So it just, amplifies. So.
Do you have maybe just a short story of maybe a recent experience where these things have all come together? And we talked about the before times. What are the after times now, kind of in real world sense?
Yeah, so we have one really good example. So like a lot of companies, we're in a point of sale transformation effort. We've got a legacy point of sale system that we've been using since well before I joined the company. It's pretty stable, it's pretty solid, but we've outgrown it. And it has a common problem, because when you sign into a bay, we inject a game charge into the point of sale system to add it to your ticket so that we're not giving you 2 bills. But a lot of times the point of sale system will stop recognizing those injections. And it's literally a 30-second fix when you know what's happening. It's just stopping a service and restarting it. But it could, in the old days, it would take 15 minutes for that to happen, because somebody had to realize it was happening, pick the phone up, call support, go through the obligatory triage process to realize this is the problem. Somebody then remotes into the point of sale server in the venue, stops the service, restarts it, bada bing, bada boom, we're up and running. Now we get real-time alerts because we know the symptoms. It's happened so many times, it's like clockwork. So we've got LogicMonitor alerting us on it, and we're also in the process now of actually automating that resolution so that when the alert happens, we can run an automated script to stop the service, restart it. And in many cases, we've taken what would take 15 minutes literally down to less than 2. Has a huge revenue impact because, obviously if we're charging $65 an hour for a bay and we don't inject the charge, that's a pretty big revenue loss, especially when you're talking about 102 of those bays trying to inject game charges.
Thanks. Scott, thanks for being willing to talk to us about that. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We're going to turn our attention now to Randall, who's been sitting so patiently over there. Randall Thompson runs TechOps, our TechOps organization for LogicMonitor. And we'll have you introduce yourself here in a quick moment. But I just want to share, Randall's got a superpower. One of Randall's superpowers, maybe you have multiple, maybe you haven't shared them all with me, is that you get to talk about things in a way with a level of candidness that not every enterprise is allowed to do. And so one of the reasons we invited Randall today is to pull the curtain back a little bit and talk about some of the details of a cloud journey into AWS with a little more specificity than maybe some folks would be able to do. So Randall, thanks for coming and being willing to do this. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Great. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Scott, too. Hi, everyone. I'm Randall Thompson. I lead our technical operations team here at LogicMonitor. And the tech ops team at LogicMonitor is the team that builds, scales, and maintains the hybrid computing infrastructure that provides the LogicMonitor platform to our customers, such as you.
Thank you.
You want me to get into my background too?
Let's learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sure. So I was hired in 2016. LogicMonitor was largely a monolithic application at the time. We operated primarily out of bare metal servers in data centers. But we still do to this day as well. And so I was hired.
Are you a cool kid or not a cool kid? I'm confused now.
I am all of the above. But yes, so I was hired to create more process around the org, to innovate and drive innovation to help our platform scale to growing customer demand.
So you've been at LN for quite some time. You've got a huge presence in cloud now. You said that you're still on-prem. You've got a picture on the screen here. Could you explain a little bit about what we're looking at? Because it looks kind of messy to me.
Yes. So what you're seeing on the screen, messy to you, messy to some, but beautiful to me.
Art.
This is actually our current LogicMonitor architecture. So we have moved well past just monolithic app directly on a bare metal server. And our state today is a hybrid model. We still utilize on-prem bare metal servers, but we have done lifting and shifting into AWS. We have adopted managed services from AWS as well, like the managed Kubernetes service, managed Elasticsearch service. And then somewhere in here, you'll also see we are a stage 4 presence as well. And so this is a moment in time. Our architecture will continue to evolve, but this is where
I think this is the visual representation of what all 4 of those stages look like simultaneously.
Yes, exactly. So it's not like we have separate lines of business running in different stages. The LogicMonitor platform, as we deliver to our customers, behind the scenes, we give customers the single pane of glass. We give customers the unified experience, but behind the scenes, it's built across all 4 stages.
Let's dig in a little bit deeper. I want to learn about what you're doing in these, or have done in these stages, because it's one thing to wave our hands around and say, I'm in stage number whatever. It's another to talk about real tangible problems and results. So can you start maybe when you went from 1 to 2, what happened there and maybe a victory you pulled out along the way?
Sure. So in our stage 1, we began a lift and shift, really, of just taking what we had in the data center and replicating it on AWS. Along the way, you discover that's not always economically sound. And
then you get the bill.
And you also discover the requirements that you might have been given by your developers or somebody building a service may not match what the actual utilization is. And so it was during this stage that we kind of began our refactoring, both of the architecture and of really evaluating, like, do we need 40 cores? Can we get by with 16 cores? Can we measure that? Can we see if the customer experience is the same?
It feels like, okay, 40 to 16, there's a story there.
These are real numbers.
They're real, okay. And there's a lot of cost savings, but what about performance? I feel like there's this pivot that we're on, there's this seesaw, right? And I can pay a lot and have great performance, or I can pay less and not have great performance, and I have to choose which one I want. What was your experience?
I would say it's a little of both. It's all true. What you end up wanting to do is figure out, is the cost efficient? Like, do you need to warrant the actual spend on whatever size resource it is that is reflected in, is it actually being used? And so, like, cloud bills, yes, they can get scary and expensive, but when you can prove that there's actual utilization of it or efficient utilization. And so I'll get into this a little bit more later, but we have also gone very advanced. And when we build new features, we will build them on more stage 4.
Okay, so let's talk the 3 and the 4 now.
Yes,
What's the
yes.
story there?
So, when I came in, we already had an existing workload, and we don't exactly have like Black Friday or Cyber Monday events. We have a steady state, and we'll get to the stats
Everyone
later.
wants to monitor on one day?
Yes, and but when we launched new features like our log feature, we didn't have an established workload, and so we wanted to lower the cost at the product launch, where we didn't have terabytes of ingest just yet. And so we began experimenting with how do you launch product features without the big capital expenditure or onset of feature launch costs. And then we'll get into where that goes, because it doesn't always stay right there.
It's kind of nice when you don't pay for something that you're not using, but
That has an advantage, but yes, once the customers come and your costs start going up, then it can lead to perpetually reevaluating, were those the right infrastructure choices?
I'm starting to hear a term of repatriation. And I'm not sure if the market's settled on that, but it's a term I'm hearing a lot now about workloads in the 4th stage that wound up being ill-matched or ill-suited to what was being done there, and they're being pulled back. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about? And if so, why?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yes, it's that's the newest kind of trendy word, and pulling back.
We
pulling
make
back
up
to
so many
where.
words.
But I actually like it. And so, yeah, when you build something and you have no customers and no usage or no load, it can be very cheap to do things in a serverless manner or fully managed. But as you establish workload, as you establish a steady state of compute on it, the unit economics of these, cloud
They change,
native,
don't
serverless technologies, they don't always scale well. They may scale at a linear fashion with your workload. You don't want that if you want to be profitable.
So not everything belongs in the 4th stage.
Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
so, being a monitoring company, we of course greatly introspect ourselves and our usage and load, and we evaluate what are the unit economics of providing said service. And then once we have that, well, why? Where does it break down? Oh, we're spending $5,000 a day on Lambda. It's a lot more expensive than it was when we were spending, less.
I think that's a good example of how all 4 stages fit together in harmony. Let's talk a bit about the size of the footprint. The audience may not be familiar with the breadth of the footprint that you support. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So this slide, I think, will kind of paint a picture of the scale and what we're dealing with. So LogicMonitor, we monitor about 3.5 million customer devices. They have, if you're familiar with it, over 60,000 of our collectors deployed in their footprint, deployed in your Topgolf locations. This collectively sends us a lot of metrics. I think we're at 920 billion a day or so. And so 24/7, we are processing 1 million web requests per second. Our collectors are constantly phoning home. This results in a data load. We're streaming about 10 gigabits a second of data into LogicMonitor 24/7, 365. And so if you were to take like an instantaneous snapshot of all our customer data, it's about 2.5 petabytes right now.
So I guess what I'm hearing is LM are heavyweight hybrid cloud users. It's not
Yes,
only are you in
and-
all 4 of the stages, but there's big stuff going on there.
Yes, we're operating at scale. We
Okay.
have not just built a little guest book application and are trying to figure out how to support 25 residents. We're quite a large
You spend
scale.
a substantial amount of time with our partners at Amazon, and maybe talk a little bit through some of these numbers and the partnership that we have together with AWS.
Sure. So as of today, we operate on, as of today, we are down to 2 on-prem data centers. We started the year at 3, but we've been in a big project to undergo our own cloud migration. Along the way, we've expanded to 6 AWS regions, and I think we have about 20,000 individual AWS resources provisioned This is, of course, to provide all the infrastructure that provides our platform. Over half of our compute is containerized. We've got 12,000 now Kubernetes applications running at any given time, and then about 3,000 physical and virtual servers spread across data center and EC2.
Okay. So again, all the stages are there. Thanks. Talk about how this journey's unfolded. It's not something that happens overnight. We've already said it's not a destination. So what were some of the key waypoints along your own journey?
Yes. So when I joined back in 2016, one of my first projects was actually building our first point of presence directly on AWS for LogicMonitor. This was more of the lift and shift model. Basically took what we had, replicated it entirely in AWS as a proof of concept, and it worked. It technically worked, but it wasn't cost efficient, and it was not going to be a model that would pave the way for more profitability, or really it just wasn't financially sound at all. But it takes doing that first kind of trial and error of seeing, is it possible in the first place? Can we even do it?
Sounds like almost a POC.
Exactly. And then from there, okay, how do we optimize? What can we do to get there? At the time on the team, I had 10 people who could all build and provision infrastructure on AWS, and I kind of had the classical one networking guy that gatekeeped all of the physical server procurement. So part of the desire was also just to increase the operational efficiency of the team. It wasn't just can we build it on AWS cheaper, but can we operate our team and ultimately our platform more efficiently by doing this migration. So we spent 3 years tuning, tweaking, re-architecting, learning. Some of the things we learned along the way, like the 40 core down to 16 core story, was back in 2016, we also operated with the fastest solid state drives you could buy. We needed incredibly high throughput.
Because you were a cool kid.
For the back-end databases serving our graphs.
You had severe latency requirements, right?
Yes. Customers do not want to wait. When they see their graphs, they want them to render.
Golf balls monitoring,
like
it's all the
that.
same.
Yeah.
People are very impatient, right? Especially about seeing the state and health of their systems. And so we just kept tuning and tweaking and evolving architecture over time. We found out we didn't need to operate on solid-state drives anymore. We made advancements with our back-end storage such that even this day, we now operate our historical data on S3. So by late 2020, we had finally come up with a model. We had tuned CPU allocations. We had, really evolved the platform from the monolith to a service-oriented architecture, microservice architecture. And that allowed us to scale different components, both horizontally and vertically. We weren't able to do that when we were just on physical servers in the data center. So by late 2020, we had launched our first customer-facing environment, pod, in AWS. It was done in a way where between the scaling to the actual usage and the re-engineering of the platform over time, it made it economically sound to deploy. And
The key pivot.
but just because you start building your new things directly on AWS doesn't mean you get to instantly let go of all your old stuff. You've got customer data, you've got customer workload, and so you are always bridging the divide between, just because we can launch something new on AWS, today, we still have to take care of all of our customers who aren't there. And so we spent a year just deploying our new customers directly on AWS. Again, we wanted to validate our assumptions. Was it actually working? Did it have the performance that they desired? And we were able to validate that over a year. And by the next year, we began the migration of our older customer workload out of our data center up to AWS. And that gets us up to today, where, as I just mentioned, we're actually able to deprecate a data center this year, and we're just going to be continuing that journey. But we still have 2 data centers to take care of. We, even once we're fully migrated to AWS, if that's the end destination, we're still not going to be in the stage 4. We still have direct, say, OSs installed on EC2s, and that type of application workload is perfectly suitable for there. We're not looking to just simply migrate things or evolve every app to a containerized environment just because. We have to constantly evaluate, does it make sense?
Thanks. So you get the pleasure, I hope that's the right word, of kind of drinking our own champagne or being customer zero or whatever the term might be. Let's maybe talk a bit about that and what kind of things you've learned along the way. You also brought along a dashboard, and it's got pointy charts on it as well, so thanks for that. Tell us about what we're looking at here. More charts and graphs, but again, I think there's a story to be told.
Yes. Yes, so our team does use LogicMonitor. We are the most important customer we have. And
do you ever have trouble getting in touch with yourself when you have a problem?
we have 0 problems with that. So we use LogicMonitor ourselves, not just to monitor the health of our infrastructure and applications, but we also use it to monitor from the perspective of our customer. What's our customer's experience using LogicMonitor like? What is their latency when they're logging in? What are proxies able to handle the load of connections? Are we making it so that they're graphs? We want the latency between the time at which you ingest a metric to be visible in the dashboard to be under a minute, so that you're able to basically see in real time the state of your own infrastructure. And so in this dashboard, we use LogicMonitor, we build dashboards, we want to figure out basically how can we, from the operations side, see what the customer sees. And so this is an example dashboard from migrating workload from our on-prem environment to AWS. So it might be hard to see, but on the left-hand side, you're looking at a data center-based environment. And on the right-hand side, you're looking at an AWS-based environment. And the key metrics we are looking for are latency, connection usage, CPU load across the web application farm, and then I think our web proxy inbound connection capacity. And so we can talk about this after the talk if anybody actually wants to dig into this more, but we built this so that we could see the customer experience as they migrate from our data center.
It's a before and after snapshot, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay.
So we wanted to know what was the customer experience like before they were on the AWS environment, and did anything change? And it was useful because we want to have a seamless experience. I think I asked you, did you notice when your account got migrated?
Did not.
We want to have that seamless experience so that when they do get migrated, we have the metrics to see it from our point of view, and then we have that there both to validate that we're doing things the right way, and then also in case there is some customer complaint, we can rule out that it was not related to the migration as well.
Thanks. Definitely more detail to get
So
get
really
into.
helpful to see the side-by-side.
Yeah, the side-by-side is
both
helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got a great story, and I think it's about, as I listen to what you're both talking about, it's about managing cost and performance together. Mm-hmm. It's not like one's always more important than the other. It kind of depends on the context of the situation. MTTR is a word that's been around forever in our business, and we're always talking about what we can do to get it lower. Randall, do you have a specific kind of a story that you can share about what you've done to achieve a better MTTR?
Sure. Yes. So I think I alluded to it a little bit of the 10 people enabled to take action on work versus being throttled by a siloed department or a siloed skill set. we have taken advantage of managed services with AWS, so we may not go full serverless for things, but they provide technologies like Elasticsearch and Kafka as a managed service. Your team doesn't have to get super in-depth.
You don't have to roll your sleeves up quite so far.
Tech stack. Amazon's managing that overhead for you. You're still going to have operational issues, but you're not dealing with the artisanally crafted infrastructure.
Artisanally crafted.
And
that's good.
And are interacting with an environment that's much more cookie cutter, and you don't have to worry about, like, say, environment to environment concerns. It's not like, oh, did we build this one a slightly different way than this environment?
Your cupcakes
Everything
all
has
start to
become
come out the
much
same,
more,
don't they?
Consistent in the deployment.
Thank you. We've covered lots about how you've right-sized resourcing, and I think that really helps with making these moves financially viable and even a good strategic move. And I love how you both described that Stage 4 is not a destination. It's absolutely a worthy tool to go into your kit. And sometimes it's the right thing to have serverless and cloud native and so on. And other times there's other technologies that are still more important. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. As we sum up here, I think we've pretty much identified that these 4 stages are here to stay. And that if you think about the way that you monitor and manage on the left side versus the right side, they're different. And as we try and figure out, well, how do I take that iceberg that splits apart, and no one would want to see me do the splits or even try, how do we successfully navigate both of these very different at times worlds and bring them back together, because you need a single plane, maybe not a single pane of glass, but a single plane upon which you can see the befores and the afters, the player experience that's in your data center of the venue, as well as what's happening on a mobile app. And so I think that these are really pragmatic and practical examples of how this is all about us every day, and how seeing it all and managing it all in one place makes a very real difference to the business outcomes that you're both responsible for. So thank you.